Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Have you ever thought about just picking up and moving to another country?
Yeah.
Like a place you've maybe only visited or even just seen in movies,
Uh-huh.
and actually like making that move. That's a huge decision.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And for most people around the world thinking about coming to America,
Mm-hmm.
it's not as simple as just like packing your bags and hopping on a plane.
Right.
For them, it's this whole maze of paperwork and regulations and things that most of us who are just, born here can't even begin to imagine.
It's so true.
So today we're going to kind of forget about all the political stuff for a minute
Okay.
and take a deep dive into the realities of trying to immigrate to the United States.
Right.
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
it can be surprising. It can be frustrating.
Yeah.
And believe it or not,
Right.
it's actually often pretty funny.
Really?
So if you're curious about like the real human stories behind all the headlines, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out.
That's right. We want to hear from you.
So to help guide us through all of this, we're going to be taking a look at this new book called America Let Me In, a Choose Your Immigration Story by Felipe Torres Medina. And don't worry, you can find a link to it on Amazon in the description below.
Right.
So this isn't your typical dry legal textbook or anything.
Okay.
Felipe actually uses this choose your own adventure style
Interesting.
to let you experience different visa options and what it's actually like for an immigrant trying to navigate all of this.
So you kind of get to walk a mile in their shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super eye-opening.
I bet.
It keeps you engaged. And honestly, there are moments that make you laugh out loud
Wow.
because they're just so absurd.
Uh-huh.
But then there are also those moments that are genuinely daunting
I can only imagine.
because it really hits you just how complex and challenging this whole system can be.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what we want to do today is kind of pull out some of the key themes and insights from Felipe's book to give you like a little shortcut to understanding just how complicated this whole U.S. immigration system really is. And the best part is Felipe's actually been through it himself.
Oh, wow.
And he writes about it in such a funny and insightful way.
That's awesome.
He weaves together these like fictionalized journeys with real anecdotes from his own life to show you all the different paths people take and, more importantly, all the hurdles they face along the way.
So we're getting the inside scoop.
Yeah, basically. And we're here to sort of like extract the most important bits so you don't have to.
Sounds good.
So you can really understand all the different sides to this whole immigration thing.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
The book starts out by being very clear about what Felipe is trying to do here. He wants to share real immigrant stories and really highlight just how much harder it's become for people who weren't born in the U.S. to move here legally.
So he's trying to raise awareness?
Yeah, and he does this in a really interesting way.
How so?
He uses this choose your own adventure format where you as the reader become the main character.
Okay.
And you get to make choices about things like which visa to apply for.
Oh, wow. So you're really immersed in the experience.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's also important to remember that while most of the specific stories are made up, they're all based on Felipe's own experiences and the realities of the immigration system.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
And he even throws in some of his own true stories, which really adds to the whole thing.
Yeah, I can see how that would make it more relatable.
Exactly. And what's really cool is how he uses humor and optimism, even when he's talking about what he calls like this big scary thing.
Oh, the U.S. immigration system.
Yeah, exactly. Like he finds a way to make a topic that could be super overwhelming and even like scary for some people into something that's engaging and even funny.
That's a great approach.
Right. And the humor isn't just there for entertainment either.
Yeah.
It actually points out just how absurd some of these immigration processes can be. We'll get into some specific examples later.
Okay.
But it's like he's shining a light on the illogical parts of the system, and he does it in a way that makes you both laugh and think.
So it's making a point exactly.
Oh, and he even has this little section at the beginning called Quick Legal Note.
Oh, right.
Where his lawyers basically say, hey, this is all for fun, not actual legal advice.
Right, of course.
And then they have this little back and forth about which parts are jokes and which parts are serious.
I like that.
It's a good way to set the tone for the whole book.
Yeah, it lets you know what to expect.
Right, and it reminds everyone that while the book can teach you a lot, it's definitely not a substitute for getting real legal help.
For sure.
If you're actually going through the immigration process.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the book starts off by asking you to choose a difficulty level for your immigration journey.
Interesting.
So there's easy, medium, hard, and very hard.
Okay.
So naturally, as the reader, you're like, oh, I'll try easy. Right.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
But here's the thing.
What?
You turn to the easy page,
Yeah.
and in big, bold letters, it just says,
Oh, no.
incorrect. There is no easy way to move to America.
Oh, wow.
Your journey has ended before it began. The end.
So that's it, huh?
Yep, just like that.
That's a pretty clear message.
Right. They basically throws it right in your face that this isn't going to be a walk in the park, no matter who you are or what your situation is.
No shortcuts.
Nope. So the book's main point is crystal clear right from the start.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an easy way to immigrate to the U.S.
It definitely sets the stage for understanding just how tough it can be.
Exactly.
Okay, so no easy route.
Right. So after that little reality check, the book moves on to the medium difficulty level.
All right, so what kind of scenarios are we talking about here?
So the first medium scenario introduces you to this, like, hot Parisian.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. They're well off, living the good life in Paris.
Sounds nice.
And they get offered a transfer to the New York office by their company.
Oh, so it's like a corporate transfer situation.
Yeah, exactly. And the visa they typically use for that is called an L1 visa, which is basically for employees of multinational companies who are being transferred to a U.S. branch.
So it's a pretty common path for professionals.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting.
And the author adds these little funny thoughts from the character.
Like what?
Like they talk about their Prada loafers versus those, those Chaco sandals that Americans love.
Right, right.
And it's those little details that make the story more relatable.
Yeah, it adds some personality.
Exactly. And even in this scenario where it seems pretty straightforward.
A corporate transfer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book starts to point out all the different costs involved.
Oh, right, because visas aren't free.
Nope, they're not. And there are also fees for things like the L2 dependent visa.
Which is for family members, right?
Yeah, so if your spouse or kids need to come with you, they'd need their own visas.
Yeah.
And then you get to make a choice.
Ooh, a decision point.
Do you hand over all the necessary documents to the lawyers?
Yeah.
Or do you say, like...
Nope, I'm out.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, so what happens if you refuse?
Well, you end up staying in Paris.
So not the worst outcome.
Yeah, not really. But it shows you that even with a big company backing you up, there are still hurdles and decisions you have to make.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the second medium difficulty path dives into the EB-5 investor visa.
Oh, the one for wealthy individuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
It's for people who are looking to immigrate by investing a significant amount of money in a U.S. business.
So they're basically putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. And the book gets pretty specific about how much money we're talking about.
How much?
You have to invest at least $1 million.
Whoa, $1 million?
Yeah, in a business that's located in a big city.
Okay.
Or $500,000.
Still a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. If the business is in a more rural or economically struggling area.
I see. So there's an incentive to invest in those areas.
Right. And on top of that,
there's more.
Your investment has to create a certain number of jobs.
Oh, so it can't just be any business.
Nope, it has to benefit American workers.
Right. That makes sense.
And this is where the book gets really funny.
Oh, tell me about it.
It tells this story about a character who has to hire American workers, and they decide to hold these, like, French baking auditions in Toledo, Ohio.
French baking auditions in Toledo.
Yep. They even have, like, patisserie premieres.
That's right.
And croissant-themed award shows.
Oh, my God. I love it.
It's just so over the top.
It really highlights how sometimes the rules can lead to these bizarre situations.
Exactly. And then out of nowhere, this royal cousin shows up needing refuge.
A royal cousin?
Yep, complete with a green snowsuit.
Oh, wow.
Which is a funny little callback to his coronation outfit from way back when.
I love those little details.
Right. And the cousin's story adds another layer, too.
How so?
He's recently divorced amicably, but his ex-wife is now living in America.
Oh, wow.
And producing movies with someone named Mauricio.
What a tangled web.
Right. It's like all these little interconnected stories.
It makes it feel so much more real and less like just, examples.
Exactly. So we've seen how medium difficulty can range from a corporate transfer with its own set of challenges to a massive financial investment.
With some really interesting job creation requirements.
Yep. So now let's brace ourselves for hard level.
Oh boy, hard level.
Yeah. What do you think awaits us there?
I have no idea. but I'm a little scared.
Well, the hard section kicks off with a pretty familiar scenario.
Okay.
A young person who dreams of going to college in America.
Ah, the classic American college experience.
Right, with all the parties and the Greek life.
Red Solo cups.
Yeah, and those infamous grade curves.
Okay.
And the visa they'd usually apply for in this case is the F1 student visa.
Right.
But then almost immediately,
Mm.
the book throws this completely random question at you.
Oh, what is it?
Do you like the Smiths?
The Smiths, the band.
Yep. And depending on your answer,
Well,
your path in the story changes.
that's hilarious.
Right? It's like out of nowhere, but it's so Felipe.
It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, and if you don't know the Smiths or their lead singer Morrissey,
Yeah.
the book kind of jokingly says you have no time for the melodramatic crooning of a weird English guy who will later turn out to be a Brexit voter.
Oh, wow. Shots fired.
I know, right? And then there's another little detour
Well-
where it asks if you happen to be like a model.
Oh, like a modern Apollo or Aphrodite?
Exactly. And if you are, there's a whole separate path.
Oh, interesting.
But if you're not model material,
Mm-hmm.
the story continues.
Okay.
And it brings up this really important question:
What's that?
financial sponsorship.
Ah, because international students usually need that.
Yeah, and this is where Felipe makes a really good point.
What's that?
He says that getting good grades isn't the main thing that determines if a student can stay in the U.S. after they graduate. Yeah, he says it's all about whether they can find a job that will sponsor them for a work visa.
Oh, that makes sense.
And he's very blunt about it.
How so?
He says, in true American fashion, the ability for you to remain here is determined by your job, and jobs are provided by companies. And companies tend to know one thing about immigration.
What's that?
It's a huge hassle.
Yeah, I could see that.
Right, so that brings us to OPT.
What's OPT?
Optional Practical Training.
Okay.
It's temporary work authorization
Mhm.
that lets students with F1 visas work in their field of study
Okay.
for a certain amount of time after they graduate.
So it's a way for them to gain experience.
Exactly.
Cool.
But of course, there's a fee for that too.
How much?
$410, and you have to pay it by check or money order.
Wow, really? Still using checks?
know, right?
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well, then the story presents this classic dilemma that a lot of students face after graduation,
Okay.
especially STEM students.
Science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yep. So for them, it's often a choice between two job offers,
What are they?
one from a smaller company in St. Louis
All right.
and one from like a big, exciting
Or
company.
Google or something.
Yeah, or in this case, it's called the electric car company.
Oh, so like Tesla.
Exactly. But they use that generic name probably for legal reasons.
Right.
Which is kind of funny in itself.
Yep, it is.
So the path with the St. Louis job goes into a lot of detail.
What kind of details?
Well, it talks about the city's French roots
Oh, interesting.
and how they're trying to revitalize the downtown area.
Cool.
And then you meet the employer, Curtis, who's kind of eccentric.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and his dad's a hardcore libertarian.
Oh, boy.
And there's this hilarious scene where they all go to dinner at Chili's.
Chili's?
And the character is like, is this racist or just a joke? It's so funny. But it also brings up that question of navigating different cultures.
That's true.
And then there's this whole other thing
Right.
where the character accidentally sees a recurring meeting on Curtis's Google Calendar. Uh-huh.
That's called Sex with Times.
Oh, my.
I know, right?
What?
Totally awkward.
So what's the point of all these, like, random personal details?
Well, I think Felipe is trying to highlight the human element of the whole immigration process. It's not just about paperwork and rules.
Yeah.
It's about real people making decisions that affect other people's lives.
That's a really good point.
And sometimes those people are a little quirky or unpredictable.
Yeah, like Curtis with his Sexy Times meeting.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, for a lot of people who come here on student visas,
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is the H-1B work visa lottery.
Oh, right, because it's so competitive.
Yeah, the book really emphasizes just how hard it is to get one of those visas.
Because there's so many people applying.
Exactly. There's a limit on how many they give out each year.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent years, there have been way more applications than available visas.
So it's like a lottery.
Yeah, basically. And your chances of winning are pretty slim.
That sounds stressful.
Oh, it is, and it's kind of ironic.
The filing date for the H-1B lottery is usually April 1st.
April Fool's Day.
Yep. The book even calls it a cruel, cruel joke.
Wow, that's rough.
It is, and then on top of that,
Yeah.
there are all these fees.
Oh, great.
A base fee, a registration fee, a fraud prevention fee. It all adds up.
So it's expensive to even apply.
Yeah, And there's no guarantee you'll get picked.
That's a big gamble.
It really is. So in the St. Louis story, the book explores two possible outcomes.
Yeah.
One is totally out there.
What happens?
A magical portal opens up.
Magical portal.
Yep. And it leads to a meadow filled with hot centaurs.
Hot centaurs.
Yep. And they look like Oscar, Isaac, Gregory Peck, and Usher.
What? Haha, that's so random.
I know, right? It's pure fantasy.
Pure comedy.
But then the other outcome is much more realistic.
And probably not as fun.
No, it's actually pretty grim.
What happened?
It involves a bathtub and someone demanding an Apple ID password.
Oh, yikes. That sounds bad.
It is. And it shows you how quickly things can go wrong in this whole process.
Yeah, it's like you're always one step away from disaster.
Yeah, it can feel that way.
So the hard path doesn't end there?
Nope, it keeps going.
Okay, what's next?
Well, now we meet a character who's an aspiring comedy writer from Colombia.
Okay.
And they come to the U.S. on an F1 visa to study in Boston.
Cool.
But of course, there are more fees involved,
Oh, so that.
like the SEVIS I-90 fee and the DS-160 application fee.
Right.
And then they have to go for their visa interview at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota.
Okay.
And it's described as super intimidating.
How so?
It takes place behind bulletproof glass.
Whoa. Seriously?
Yeah, and you have to talk through what feels like a prison phone.
That's intense.
Yeah, the author really captures that feeling of being treated like a criminal.
Just for wanting to study here.
Exactly.
So what happens in the interview?
Well, there's this funny part where they have an emotional support section of jokes.
Oh, really?
Yep, and it basically makes fun of New York City compared to Boston.
That's funny.
It is, but then the character ends up moving to New York anyway
Of course.
to chase their dreams,
Yeah.
and they get a job writing listicles for this website called Hype-YS Espanol.
That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, it does, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a visa sponsorship.
Oh, right. That's the problem.
And eventually the whole Espanol division gets shut down.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so now their visa status is in jeopardy.
So what do they do?
Well, this is where they learn about the O1 visa.
The what?
The O1 visa. It's often called the Alien of Extraordinary Ability visa.
Alien of extraordinary ability.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, it does.
So how do they find out about this visa?
I'm curious.
They're at a skeleton-themed restaurant.
A skeleton-themed restaurant?
Yep. And they strike up a conversation with this Dutch voice actor named Robin.
Okay.
And Robin tells them all about the O1.
That's random, but I guess you never know where you'll find helpful information.
Right. So the book then explains all the different categories for O1 visas.
Like what?
There's arts sciences, athletics, education, and business entrepreneurship.
So it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, it does. And it specifically mentions the criteria for showing you have extraordinary achievement in movies or television.
So you have to be like really, really good at what you do.
Exactly. And the author actually uses himself as an example.
Oh, really?
Yep. He talks about his Peabody Award, his WGA Award, and his Emmy nominations.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is, but even with all that, the requirements for an O1 visa are still pretty intense.
Like, what are we talking about?
Well, you need about 10 letters of intent,
Okay.
a bunch of official forms, a
Yeah.
super detailed resume,
Mm.
glowing letters of recommendation,
Okay.
news clippings, expert interviews, proof of awards, and recognition.
That's a lot of paperwork.
It's a ton of stuff to gather.
Wow.
And then on top of that,
There's more.
you need an advisory opinion.
What's that?
It's basically a letter from a labor organization or peer group in your field.
Oh, so they're vouching for you.
Exactly, saying that you're as awesome as you claim to be.
Okay, I get it.
But, of course, those letters cost money, too.
Oof, I bet.
Like $200 to $600 each.
Ouch, that adds up.
Yeah, it does. Plus, there's the O1 filing fee itself.
Right.
And then if you need things to move faster,
Yeah.
you can pay for premium processing.
Okay.
And then, of course, there are legal fees on top of all that.
So we're talking thousands of dollars potentially.
Yeah, easily.
Wow, this is getting expensive.
It is. But anyway, the story follows this character as they try to get an O1B visa.
The one for the arts.
Yep. They hire a lawyer, get a job as a bilingual copywriter,
Okay.
and it seems like everything's going okay. But the lawyer messes up.
Oh, no, how?
They file for the wrong type of O1 visa.
You're kidding.
Nope. They file for an O1A instead of an O1B.
So what's the difference?
The O1A is for sciences, education, business, athletics, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And the O1B is specifically for the arts.
So it's a big difference.
Yeah, and because of that mistake, they get hit with an RFE,
That's an RFE.
a request for evidence.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
It's not, it basically means that the immigration people need more proof
More proof of what?
that you deserve the visa.
Okay.
And it can cause a lot of delays and stress.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So this really shows how important it is to have a good lawyer.
Yeah. And to make sure they file for the right visa. It's
Exactly.
like one tiny mistake can derail everything.
Yeah, it can.
So what happens to the character after the RFE?
Well, this is where the book takes a detour.
Okay.
It presents this alternate scenario.
What is it?
What if the comedy writer was secretly like a super talented soccer player?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they try to join Major League Soccer's Columbus Crew.
The Columbus Crew.
Yep, and there's this whole funny misunderstanding about Sonic Drive-In.
Sonic Drive-In. I love Sonic.
Yeah, so in this alternate path, the character has a choice.
What's that?
They get injured playing soccer in Montreal.
Oh, no.
And now they can either move to Calgary, Canada,
Okay.
or stay in Columbus and try to get a green card through the EB1 visa.
Oh, the EB1, the one we talked about earlier?
Yep, the one for people who are at the top of their game.
Yeah, the book calls it the Pokemon evolution of the O1.
Exactly. Like, if you're serious about staying in the U.S., this is the visa you want.
So remind me what's so special about the EB1.
Well, it's a green card,
Okay.
which means you get permanent legal residency.
Oh, wow.
And you don't have to keep applying for visas every few years.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. But the catch is
Here's catch.
there are no quotas for EB1 visas.
Okay.
But the standards are super high.
Higher than the O1?
Yeah, the rejection rate is actually higher.
It's harder to get.
It is.
So what do you need to qualify for an EB1?
Well, for the EB1A category, which is for people with extraordinary ability,
Mm-hmm.
you don't technically need a job offer right away.
Okay.
But you have to prove that you're truly extraordinary.
Like, how extraordinary are we talking about?
Like, you should have won or been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize.
A Pulitzer.
Yeah, or an Oscar.
Whoa.
Or an Olympic medal.
So basically you have to be world-renowned.
Pretty much.
Okay. What if
Yeah.
you haven't won those big awards?
Then you need to meet at least 3 out of 10 other criteria.
Okay, what are those?
Things like having other awards that are less famous but still important, belonging to really exclusive professional organizations,
Okay.
having articles written about you in major publications,
Interesting.
judging the work of others in your field,
Mm-hmm.
making original contributions to your field,
Okay.
publishing scholarly articles,
Mm-hmm.
having your work displayed in exhibitions,
Okay.
playing a leading role in important organizations,
Got it.
earning a really high salary,
Mhm.
and having commercial success in the performing arts.
So basically you have to have a long list of accomplishments.
Yeah, you really do.
That makes sense.
And remember, the EB1 has other subcategories too, like
Really?
the EB1B for outstanding professors and researchers,
Okay.
and the EB1C for executives of multinational companies.
Got it.
But for those two, you usually need an employer to sponsor you.
So it's a little different.
Yeah, and of course there are more filing fees for the EB1 process.
Of course there are.
Okay, so let's switch gears completely now
Okay.
and talk about the K1 fiancé visa.
Oh, the one where you bring your fiance to the U.S. to get married?
Exactly.
Okay, tell me about that one.
So it lets a U.S. citizen bring their fiancé to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
with the intention of getting married within 90 days.
90 days. That's not a lot of time.
I know, right? It's a pretty tight deadline.
So what's the catch with this visa?
Well, you have to prove that you're genuinely in love.
Oh, so it's not just for anyone.
Nope. You can't just marry someone to get them a green card.
Right.
You have to show that you have a real relationship.
And that you plan to build a life together.
Exactly. And the book breaks down the whole process into 4 main steps.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, USCIS has to recognize a relationship as legitimate.
Okay.
Then your fiancé has to go through a visa interview at a U.S. embassy.
Yeah.
Then, when they arrive in the U.S., they have to convince Customs and Border Protection that they're here for the right reasons.
Okay.
And finally, you have to get married within those 90 days.
So there are a lot of hoops to jump through.
There really are. And of course, there's a filing fee for the K1 visa, too.
I figured.
And to illustrate all this, the book tells a story about a Slovenian model
A Slovenian model?
and an optometrist from Memphis.
What an unlikely pair.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But they meet and fall in love,
Huh.
and they start thinking about the K1 visa.
Interesting.
And the book even makes a joke about that TLC show, 90 Day Fiancé.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that show.
Yeah, so it's like they're acknowledging the whole reality TV aspect of it.
That's funny.
And then there's this great scene where the optometrist's dad is setting things.